You've seen it happen, that moment when someone sizes you up and makes their calculation, the way their eyes scan your face, your demeanor, your presence, and they decide you're safe to test. Maybe it happened at work when a colleague tried to dump their responsibilities on you, assuming you wouldn't push back. Or in a negotiation when someone lowballed you, thinking you wouldn't notice. Or in a relationship when someone tested boundaries they assumed you didn't have. They saw your calm and read it as softness. They noticed your lack of drama and mistook it for naivety. Your quiet confidence looked like uncertainty to them. That was their miscalculation. What they didn't realize is that your stillness wasn't emptiness. Your silence wasn't ignorance. Your peace wasn't weakness. You were simply choosing not to waste energy on performances they expected. You were operating from a different playbook entirely, one they didn't recognize because they'd never seen it before. And here's what's interesting. This misreading happens so consistently that there's actually a pattern worth examining, because the same qualities that make people underestimate you, your composure, your emotional regulation, your refusal to engage in unnecessary conflict, these are the exact qualities that research suggests contribute to looking and feeling younger than your chronological age. Let me show you why. There's actual science behind this connection between emotional regulation and how you age. It's not mystical, it's measurable. When your body experiences chronic stress, it floods your system with cortisol and adrenaline. In short bursts, these hormones help you respond to threats. But when they're constantly elevated, they become destructive. Chronic stress shortens telomeres, the protective caps on your DNA that influence cellular aging. It increases inflammation throughout your body. It disrupts sleep, which is when your cells repair themselves. It breaks down collagen, the protein that keeps skin elastic. Over time, this internal chaos shows externally. Now consider someone who's developed strong emotional regulation. They still experience stress, everyone does, but they process it differently. Their nervous system returns to baseline faster. They sleep better. Their inflammation markers are lower. Their cortisol doesn't stay chronically elevated. The result? Their cells literally age more slowly. Think about two people with similar genetics, similar diets, similar lifestyles. One spends years in a state of constant reactivity, ruminating over conflicts, replaying arguments, staying vigilant for the next threat. The other has learned to acknowledge stress, process it, and release it. 10 years later, the difference is visible. Not because one person was chosen or spiritually superior, but because emotional regulation has measurable physiological effects. This isn't about being emotionless or suppressing feelings. It's about having a nervous system that can shift gears, about feeling anger without staying angry for days, about experiencing disappointment without spiraling into despair, about facing challenges without your body treating every setback like a life-threatening emergency. The calm that others mistake for weakness? It's actually a sophisticated stress response system that you've trained through experience. And one of its side effects, not the point, but a side effect, is that it preserves you in ways that show on your face, in your energy, in how you move through the world. Here's what's actually happening when people misread your calm. They're projecting their internal state onto you. Most people live in a constant state of low-level anxiety. Their baseline is alert, defensive, calculating. They've normalized chaos as the price of safety. So when they encounter someone who's genuinely at peace, it doesn't compute. Their brain searches for an explanation, and the most accessible one is, this person must be naive. They clearly don't see what I see. It's not malicious, it's just unfamiliarity. Imagine someone who's only ever heard loud music. To them, silence might sound like broken equipment. They're not trying to misunderstand. They literally don't have a reference point for what genuine peace looks like. This is why your calm can be genuinely disarming. People expect resistance, defensiveness, or emotional escalation. When you respond with clarity instead of reactivity, it creates a pattern interrupt. They've prepared for a fight, and you're simply stating a boundary. They've loaded up arguments, and you're just saying no without justification. It's like they've brought a complicated lock-picking kit to a door that was never locked. Now, let's be honest. Sometimes people aren't just confused. They're actually testing you. Some individuals do use manipulation consciously, but here's the interesting part. Even calculated manipulation relies on predictable emotional responses. When you don't provide those responses, the manipulation fails regardless of intent. The point isn't to sort people into categories of innocent misunderstanders versus evil manipulators. The point is that your calm operates effectively in both scenarios. With genuinely confused people, it offers them a new reference point. With calculated manipulators, it simply doesn't give them the leverage they're looking for. Either way, the misreading reveals more about their internal landscape than yours, and your refusal to match their frequency isn't weakness. It's a choice you're making from a position of awareness, not ignorance. Boundaries aren't walls. They're not about shutting people out or being cold. They're simply clarity about where you end and someone else begins. And clarity, it turns out, is surprisingly disarming. Most people defend their boundaries with explanations, justifications, or emotional intensity. I can't do that because, followed by a list of reasons they hope will be convincing enough. This approach actually weakens the boundary because it frames it as negotiable. If you can just present better reasons, maybe the person will accept your no. But when you've developed genuine calm, your boundaries sound different. They're statements, not arguments. That doesn't work for me. I'm not available for that. I've decided not to. No justification, no defensiveness, no invitation to debate. This is disarming because there's nothing to push against. People accustomed to boundary negotiations don't know what to do when there's no negotiation happening. They're expecting resistance they can overcome, and instead they're meeting simple clarity. Here's a workplace example. A colleague habitually tries to offload their tasks onto others. With most people, they start with a sob story, gauge the reaction, then apply pressure. But when they encounter someone who simply says, "I won't be taking that on," without anger or lengthy explanation, the usual script fails. There's no guilt to exploit because there's no guilt to exploit because there's no emotional escalation. There's no crack to widen because there's no emotional escalation. Now, let's be realistic. This approach has social costs. Some people won't like it. Some will call you cold, difficult, or unhelpful. Healthy boundaries sometimes mean losing relationships that were only functional when you had none. That's not a flaw in the system. It's information. When someone can only relate to you if you have no boundaries, that relationship was never sustainable anyway. Your calm clarity simply reveals this truth faster. Let's address something important. Being calm doesn't mean being blind. There's a criticism that often gets leveled at people who practice emotional regulation. You're just ignoring problems. You're spiritually bypassing real issues. You're pretending everything is fine when it's not. That's not what we're talking about here. Peace isn't about pretending manipulation doesn't exist. It's not about tolerating mistreatment with a serene smile. It's not about telling yourself everything happens for a reason when someone genuinely wrongs you. Real peace comes after full awareness, not instead of it. You see the manipulation attempt, you just choose not to take the bait. You recognize the toxicity, you just decide not to absorb it. You understand the game being played, you just opt not to participate. Think of a skilled martial artist. Their stillness isn't ignorance of danger, it's readiness without tension. They're aware of every potential threat in the room, but they're not exhausting themselves maintaining a defensive posture against all of them simultaneously. They've developed the discernment to know which threats warrant response, and which can simply be observed and sidestepped. This is crucial. Some situations do require confrontation. Some boundaries need to be defended actively, Some injustices demand anger and action. Wisdom isn't about being calm in all circumstances. It's about knowing which circumstances call for which response. The calm we're discussing isn't passivity. It's not acceptance of everything. It's strategic disengagement from battles that don't serve you, so you have full energy available for the ones that matter. That's not weakness or denial. That's resource management. This calm you've developed, it wasn't a gift you were born with. It's a skill you practiced, often through difficult circumstances that forced you to learn. Nobody wakes up one day magically able to regulate their emotions. It's built through repetition, through choosing differently hundreds of times until the new choice becomes your default. And it's important to acknowledge this because the narrative of being naturally calm or just different removes the agency from your own development. Here are some practices that build this capacity. When something triggers you, practice waiting 5 minutes before responding. Not suppressing the feeling, but creating space between stimulus and response. In those 5 minutes, you're not deciding whether to react, you're deciding how. This gap is where emotional regulation lives. Start noticing what actually triggers your stress response versus what you think should trigger it. Many people react intensely to things that don't actually matter to them because they've been conditioned to believe those things should matter. Conversely, they might minimize genuine boundary violations because they've normalized them. Real awareness means separating conditioned responses from authentic ones. For 1 week, track what actually drains you versus what energizes you. Not what you assume based on social narratives, but what you actually experience. Some people discover that networking events they thought they hated are actually fine. It's the guilt about not wanting to go that's exhausting. Others realize that relationships they thought were supportive are actually depleting them. Practice consciously choosing which conversations deserve your full engagement. Not every provocation requires a response. Not every debate needs your participation. Not every social media argument needs your input. This isn't about being aloof. It's about being strategic with finite energy. Now here's the reality check. Some days you won't feel calm. Some weeks will knock you off center. You'll react when you meant to respond. You'll engage when you meant to step back. That's not failure. That's being human. The practice isn't about perfection. It's about gradually shifting your baseline. About recovering faster when you do get knocked off balance. About having more days where you operate from choice rather than reaction. The youthful quality people notice? It's a byproduct of this practice, not the goal. The real benefit is spending less of your life consumed by stress that doesn't serve you. Let's bring this back to earth. Looking younger than your age is interesting, but it's not the point. It's one small, visible indicator of something larger. You're moving through life with less unnecessary damage. That's it. That's the real story. You're not spiritually superior to anyone. You're not in a cosmic battle against forces of darkness. You haven't been chosen by the universe for special protection. You've simply developed a set of skills, emotional regulation, boundary setting, strategic disengagement that happen to reduce chronic stress. And reduced chronic stress has measurable effects on how you age. Some people look at you and make assumptions. Sometimes they underestimate you. Sometimes that's frustrating, but here's the mature perspective. Their misreading is their problem to solve, not yours to fix. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need revenge fantasies where they realize their mistake. You just need to keep living in a way that serves your actual well-being. And let's be completely honest, calm doesn't solve all problems. There are situations where emotional intensity is appropriate, where anger is the correct response, where confrontation is necessary, where walking away isn't an option because something or someone genuinely needs defending. Wisdom isn't about being calm always. It's about knowing when calm serves you and when action does. The goal was never to stay young. The goal is to live fully without carrying weight that isn't yours, to engage with what matters and release what doesn't, to build a life where your energy goes toward things that actually deserve it. If you've recognized yourself in any of this, here's the real question worth asking. What are you currently carrying that isn't yours? What stress have you normalized that you could actually release? What battles are you fighting that don't need fighting? Those answers matter more than how old anyone thinks you look, because at the end of the day, the measure of a life well lived isn't how young you stayed, it's how fully you lived without unnecessary suffering. That's the real prize.